गुरुपादानि सविलासमहामोहो ग्राहग्रासे कर्मणि शङ्करं केशवं वादरायणं सूत्रभाष्य कृतौ वन्दे ईश्वरगुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरि तत्सत्. So yesterday we were doing the verse number one with it, and what we were trying to do, we were is Chaitanya that into four in which it has forms. Does it have any forms? No. But there are in which we try to understand it, and to fourfold of the same Brahman Chaitanya, we have Vakya, which analysis of in the previous chapter, Tattvamasi. So you have the Tat Padartha and Tvam Padartha Vakya. This Tvam means Jivatma. And what is the Tat Padartha? Advaita Chaitanya. What is the Artha? Suddha Chandra. Suddha Chaitanya. Shuddha Chit. Therefore, we discussed yesterday that similar have examples given to mix these four words, four conceptual ways of understanding the Brahman with different upadhis. Krishna Akasha, even though we refer to that as Ghatakasha. Then you have Mahakasha. And that is what is Sukha and Mahakasha. So what Tvam and Tat. Jivatma, and what are that and Megha? How do you know reflected in Megha? With the theory of reflections, mirror images. How do you know the Maya in which it is reflected? Maya is actually Maya itself is Suddha Chaitanya is reflected in it, so it would appear to be very difficult to understand for you. So it is an appearance. You're not a real reflection. There's nothing. How we are trying to this reflected is Maya Ishvara reflected in Samparna. At our level, the sattva thing becomes weaker, raga, dvesha, avidya, upahita chaitanya becomes jiva. And that is what we refer to as chidabhasha, that is the buddhi. Therefore, he's saying, if you look at the verse number 23, heat, it's like knives or swords, anything. First, you heat it, put that piece of iron, and you inside the sky is red water, but it is called jalak. And what are we referring to as akasha? The reflected akasha. And this that is the outer structure. So this is the reflection of chaitanya, of consciousness. Prananam dharana jivaha sansarena sayujyate. Jiva prana dharane, that jiva shabda. Prananam dharana, because with that particular buddhi, without that consciousness, dharana jivaha sansarena sayujyate. And then why shouldn't the kutastha, as we discussed yesterday, why can't the kutastha be sansari? Why can't the kutastha be the main unit? Free. Less real than the absolute truth. In that sense, we have to make sense of it. Tat pratibimbakaha chittaha pratibimbas chidabhasha. Chidvad abhasate iti chidabhasa. It is called Chaitanya because we actually think we have pure consciousness. No? We see we are a conscious being with the help of this reflection of consciousness and this buddhi, and buddhi itself is kalpita. So you can say that this is completely imaginary, non-substantiable. You are first saying buddhi itself is imagined, then you are saying that imagined platform is reflecting Suddha Chaitanya. Complete, mysterious, and very, very confusing. Yes, it is. That is not denied. That is how it is when we are entering into the subject. That is how it's going to appear. So therefore, in kutaste mayaya buddhi kalpita tatra buddho ghatagata jale. Like, what is the example is given? Now you see the akash is reflected in water. What is the real akasha? The space inside that pot or ghata. What are you referring to as akasha? Water is reflected on the surface of the water, which has filled that particular ghata, that pitcher, that pot. See, that akasha is kalpita real. That jalakasha, that akasha, which you see on the water surface inside a pot, is real or false? Same way, buddhi is kalpita. The way jalakasha is kalpita, with an example, the Vedanta Acharya is explaining us Ghatakasha is somewhere real. Huh? It's not different from the Mahakasha. It's the differentiation we are doing using Ghata as a upadhi. But the Jalakasha is absolutely not real, but we think it's real, and that is what he is saying is essentially a misjudgment of our discretion, misapplication of our judgment, and therefore he is saying it is buddhi kalpita tatra buddho ghata jale pratibimbita akasha iva chit pratibimbakaha chittaha pratibimba chidabhasa. That is what is the reflection chidabhasa. Prananam dharanat pranadharana rupa jiva sabda prabritti nimitta bhuta kriya sambandhat. Big sentence, huh? So let's break it. It's very easy. Chidabhasa, you understood? Okay, that Chidabhasa is responsible for explaining our activities. How? Prananam dharanat, because with that, everything that is happening around us can be explained. Without that consciousness, nothing happens. That consciousness is reflected. That Jalakasha, for a child who cannot see Ghatakasha, Jalakasha is the Akasha. He cannot see Mahakasha, he cannot see Ghatakasha, he will only see Jalakasha, little boy. But you have to start explaining what is Akasha with the help of Jalakasha to him. That is the beginning point. And therefore he's saying prananam dharanat pranadharana rupa jiva shavda. Jiva prana dharane. How the jiva sabda will be used. This should be some explanation. This should be something called prabritti nimitta. You want to have sabda prabriti. There is a reason for you to use a certain word. In Sanskrit, we call it prabriti nimitta. What is the reason for you to use that word? Prabriti nimitta bhuta kriya sambandhat. Why are you saying this is living? Because it is moving. Nimitta bhuta kriya. Because it's moving, you say it's living. Nimit sambandhat. And jiva sambandhat having relations to what? This chidavas, this buddhi. Jivo jiva sangyako bhavati. Therefore, we refer to that chidavasa as jiva. So remember one thing. Jivatma is nothing called atma, is jiva. Jiva means not pure consciousness. It's not ghatakasa, it's not kutastha. It is a superimposed appearance, a superimposition of a kind of a veil on pure consciousness, which is kutastha chaitanya. There's a adhyasa. It takes another name. It's like a green, you just have a bunch of green leaves you're holding very close to a crystal, and it starts looking greenish. That green crystal is here for you because of those set of leaves which are kept very close to it. What is happening? Pure nature of it is it doesn't have any colors. Therefore, colors means it has white color or whatever you can call it. Then if you jiva, etad pranadharanam kutastasya kinashat ityataha, but somebody might say, why can't the kutastha, why can't the ghatakasa vidi jiva? Why do you have jalakasa jiva? He's saying sansarena iti. Because birth and death is not possible for kutastha. I have used the word kutastha means avikari. There is no change in it. But the jiva is jayate, asti, vardhate, vipranamati, apakhyate, vinashyati. These are sarvikaras which are going on in us, and therefore the kutastha cannot be subjected to so many changes. Therefore, we have to presume that what is changing is what is taking birth, which is dying. What is that? Chidavasa. Jiva sangyako bhavati etat pranadharanam kutasthya vyakting nasyat ityataha sansarena itya sa jivaha sansarena yuchyate. That is that jiva which is getting into bondage in sansara. What are you? Nitya Suddha Buddha Mukta Svabhava, nothing to worry. It's like an old lady who was taken to the operation theater, and you explain and then you explain to her that this is the Bhagavad Gita, this is what tells you about yourself, and then the lady asks, so they are going to operate my body. I said, yeah. He said, so why should I be worried? I said, yeah, that's the thing, why should you be worried? They're going to perform the surgery on your physical sheath, Annamaya Kosha. You will be in a coma state, and then you will come back as sense. The Annamaya Kosha will go some vikara, but you are not the Annamaya Kosha. You are beyond this. You understand that? Yeah, they will do something about it. There's nothing to worry now. Let me pray and go. Let's not delay. The patient was prepared after half an hour of Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter. That is how it works. Then who saw jiva sansarani yujyate sansari bhavati. Natu kudastha, natu atma. Yeah, that's Suddha Atma. Apitu chidabhasa eva, jivatma eva. Kutastasya nishkriyatvena, because it is niskriya, doesn't undergo any changes. Pranadharanakatva asambhavat. It doesn't undergo any changes. How can you associate with the changes, the metamorphosis that is associated with life at different stages? Nothing happens to the kutastha, so therefore it cannot be equated with somebody who actually is a sansari. Asangatva is not touched by anything. Ghatakasa is not touched by the reflection on it or the kind of liquid which is inside. Sansara sambandha asambhavacha. Sansara sambandha asambhavacha. It can never be sansari. Who is sansari then? We say bahut sansari bandhu hai. This guy is very materialistic. He is very aesthetic person. He is a very materialistic. He is a very sensuous person. Who is sensuous? Who is materialist? Who is a hedonist? Who is an intellectual? everything here, the Chidavash. All of these people are Nitya Buddha Suddha Mukta Swabhava. All of us are the children of eternity, self-luminous eternity. Sambandha asabhavacha tad atiriktah tat pratibimba jiva tad atiriktah tat pratibimba tad atiriktah atma suddhatma tat pratibimba jiva, and then the reflection in the buddhi eva sansari bhavati iti bhavaha. Done. This much we have done. Now kutastasya satvepi tasya abhane karanamaha. Kutastha is there. Really, I haven't seen it. And yesterday we had come up till this point. It's very important. Let me touch upon it and we'll go forward from there. What is he trying to say there? यलोबुम्ना घटाकाशो यथा सर्वास्तिरोहितः तथा जीवेन कुटस्थः सोऽन्योन्याध्यास उच्यते. Now this is a very complicated, interesting, conceptual tool which the Vedanta Acharyas use to explain if Kutastha is never in bondage and a very imagined false self of us is in bondage, why should we be bothered? You know, please understand, it's very interesting. There is some neuroscience experiments on it. And if you understand it, then Vedanta becomes super easy to understand. What they did was that a person's left hand was put below the table, then they will put his right hand on the table. Then they will put a silicon hand, which represents the left hand, on the table. Please understand the example. There is a silicon left hand, and there is my own real right hand on the table. And then they start beating these hands, both the hands, okay? They start beating the right hand. Which is my real hand? My right hand is my real hand. And with a stick, they are hitting it. I'm feeling pain. Yeah? And then they suddenly hit the left hand a little strongly, applying a little more force. I can see tuck. And the person surges in pain. Ah! But it is a silicon hand. His hand is below. Now, why did he do that? I mean, this is nothing. This is nothing prejudice, or this is nothing like the fun people are making about Gomutra experts or something like that. It's not prejudice. This is Western science, high-level experimental psychology. So you hit this one. It's a silicon hand, but you're feeling pain. Where from the pain is coming? Your hand is below. It has nothing to do with it, but you're feeling the pain. So you definitely confuse the silicon hand as your hand, and then it was powerfully established in your brain somewhere that my hand is being hurt, and you cry, right? Or you're shouting, you're shouting, whatever. So it's hit here, it's not your hand, you're feeling the pain. This is called in Vedanta Tadatmya Adhyasa. Now, what has happened here? Your hand can feel the pain. So this is your right hand. Similarly, you have a left hand. So your real biological hand has an attribute called the ability to carry the message to the brain that is being hurt. It feels the pain. Actually, you feel the pain through the hand. Now, the silicon hand doesn't have the capacity, it doesn't have consciousness. So the attributes of your real hand is superimposed on the silicon hand. Yeah. And then the qualities of the silicon hand is kind of attributed to your real hand, which is below. Silicon hand cannot feel any pain. You can feel pain, which is below. Then your hand is actually not feeling any pain. Your silicon hand is feeling some pain. This is, in a certain sense, this is anunyadhyasya. Another good example which is given is, you have an iron ball or your golaka, and you heat it up, it becomes red. Then you say, the red fireball, Bartulatva, spherical size of fire. Does fire have spherical size? No, it doesn't have. Spherical size an attribute of what? It's an attribute of the Ayapinda, the iron spear. Yeah, it's like a shot put. The shot put ball is there, is spherical in size. It's an attribute of that iron ball. And that spherical size of the iron ball is now being attributed to fire. Done. And then, when you by mistake touch that iron ball, does an iron ball have the capacity to burn your hand? It doesn't have. But what do you say? How did you burn your hand? Because I touched the iron ball. Actually, you burnt your hand because you touched very hot. So the heat, the fire capacity which was infused in the iron ball, that sort of burnt you. The fire burnt you, but you're attributing it to the iron ball. So this is itiretara adhyasha. So there is A and B. The qualities of A is attributed to B, and qualities of B is attributed to A. By the way, minor digression. In social psychology, they have done a lot of studies. It's called feminization of masculinity and masculinization of femininity. Those of you who are married can understand it. So what happens in the beginning, the male member in the union is a little more assertive because of the cultural value sets, a little domineering and stuff like that. Children are scared of whom? The dad. Big boss at home. Mom says, let dad come, I'm going to tell him. So that hierarchy is actually created by both Papa and Mama. The child is most scared of the dad and opens up and gets emotional cushion from the mom. What happens in old age? Is the mom the boy or the daughter-in-law is scared of, not the dad? They find because there is a feminization of masculinity. So they start inculcating habits of being compassionate, being loving. Yeah, you see the daughter-in-law, very fond of the father-in-law, finds it easy to deal with. The best example of it is given when Gandhi had gone to England in the second round table conference. You'd see some pictures on the internet. The British woman and the journalists and all will hug him because they did not see him as a masculine figure who posed any threats to them. He was somebody who was compassionate, he was effeminate, he was loving. So, an old man, women find it easy to relate to old men. Whereas old women are tougher, they don't have any emotions, they can be very hard on you. So, that is called masculinization. Now, I just gave it as an example. What I was trying to say is that it's another example of anunyadhyasha. When X and Y are there, qualities of X are imposed on Y, and qualities of Y are imposed on X. That is real change. If there is actually masculinization of femininity and feminization of masculinity, that's real change. But here, this is anunyadhyasha. So it's picked up from some source. I've just written it in the comments here, in the notes here. Atmani anatma dharmadhyasa. Atmani anatma dharmadhyasa. What is the example you would give? मैं मोटा हो गया हूँ, I'm very fat, I is referring to what? Atma. Atma becomes fat. I'm very rich. So Atma has money. No. You're talking about your physical body. You're talking about your material positions. And yet you're behaving as if they have something to do with the Atma Tattva. Atmani anatma dharma adhyasa. That's the first level. Then anatmani cha atma dharma adhyasa. I don't care. I can drive. Even if I'm asleep, my hands do drive. Hands can drive. So you're attributing consciousness, discretionary power, smartness to your hands. These are jada padarthas, inanimate. They don't have any consciousness. Of course, in certain sense, everything have consciousness. I'm not taking it in that direction. So broadly what happens, that itereta. So adhyasa means in very basic ways to make sense of it, how Vedanta Acharyas explained to us, they say atasmin tad buddhi. Atasmin. Tasmin means, let's imagine, tadvati tat prakarako buddhi yathartha jnana. That we know. When you have a cat, you see that as a cat. But it's not a cat, but you think it's a tiger. Atasmin, it's not a tiger. If it's a tiger, you have tiger buddhi, it's fine. Atasmin tad buddhi, if it's a cat, but you think it's a tiger, right? If it's a rope, you think it's a snake, that is adhyasha. So you have sarpa buddhi. There should be raju buddhi, but you have sarpa buddhi imposed on it. And it's a poisonous snake. It's a rattlesnake. It's a viper. It's a cobra. All kinds of things. And then some people are going to give theories. How dangerous is the snake? No, it's a rope. Therefore, he's saying Atmani anatma dharmadhyasho anatmani cha atma dharmadhyaso anunyadhyasa. That is how Shastra explains. It's a simple definition. Now the sloka will become easy to understand. Yalabomna ghatakasho यथा सर्वास्ति रोहितः तथा जीवेन कूटस्थ सोन्योन्याध्यास उच्यते. It's easier to understand now. Now, in jala, yellow means in that jalakasha. In that jalakasha, what do you see? Ghatakasha. Yatha sarvaha tirohitaha. Are you being able to see the ghatakasha, the pot space when it is full with water? You only see the jalakash. Ghatakasha you cannot see. That becomes hidden. What fills it? So can you see the self? Now this is a big secret in it. Why we cannot see our pure self? We can only see our thoughts. So if you look at Buddhist masters, you look at the Kriya Yoga experts or the mindfulness meditators, what do they advise? You are not your thoughts. How do you meditate? Liberating yourself from your thoughts is the first step towards meditation. They're all essentially conveying this eternal Vedantic insight, Upanishadic insight. That Jalakasha hides the Ghatakasha. You have to remove the water to have some sense of what is Ghatakasha. You have to silence all thoughts. So, what is that state of good meditation? It's thoughtless awareness. Awareness of what? At the beginning, it's awareness. You be aware of your body. You, in the Buddhist mindfulness meditation, they give you the techniques. You recognize all the physical seeds, the Annamaya Kosha, then and try to find out wherever you are feeling any pain, and they'd say, okay, now be careful about the processes, biological processes. Try to feel them. Then feel your emotions, feel your thoughts, slowly elevate yourself, and ultimately, the Vedanta will say that focus on that Swarupa, and the Buddhist would say that full focus on that Shunyata, but they have very sophisticated understanding of Shunyata. Is not as simplistic as a very traditional Vedantist would like us to believe. We have to give them, because I personally think they're our spiritual cousins, and we are saying more or less the same thing with different sets of words. So what they call Shunya, we call Purna, but by Shunya they are not also saying absence of something. By Shunya they are talking about a state of interdependence. Therefore, they're using that word Sunya, but we are not going to have a session on Buddhism right now. We come back to the Vedanta. Tatha jivena kudastha saha anunyadhyasaha iti uchyate. Sugama padayojana. It's very easy to understand. Okay, let's understand what is he trying to say. Atra jivena kutastasya tirodhanam. It hides. The Ghatakasa hides. It vanished. How did it vanish? Because you fill it with water. How did the self vanish? Because you were too thoughtful. You are caught up in your thoughts. We say, no, like I was absent minded. I was lost in these imaginations. I was lost in my project. I lost myself. You feel very breathless in your office towards the afternoon. Or if your 2-3 weeks goes like that, you feel very lonely. You need a break. You just need to sit with yourself. I keep telling young people, you're talking about dating boyfriend, girlfriend, you date yourself. Sit somewhere. Go closer to you. Try to see the Ghatakasha. You're trapped in the Jalakasha. Therefore, he's saying, Atra jivena kutastasya tirodhanam. Kutasa is that level of reality, which is Ghatakasha, and you are not being able to identify and recognize and feel it because you are seeing the Jalakasha, the water surface, which hides it. Tirodhanam. Na vyavahare anubhuyamana tirodhana sadrasam. What do you tirodhana? Does it hide? No, it doesn't hide. Does it vanish? No, it doesn't. Then what? He's saying, na vyavahare anubhuyamana. You don't feel it every moment during vyavahara kala. And therefore you say it has vanished. That is how you are bringing an analogy, a comparison between Tirodhana, vanishing act of the self. The self vanishes from us because we are trapped in our thoughts, in our activities. Then, Kintu anya sadrisam eva ityaha sa iten. What is that? Sa eva. Sa tacha tirodhanam anunyadhyasah iti uchyate. Do you know what is that? That itself is called anunyadhyasah. It's a beautiful thing. Okay? This is a very beautiful, this is the basic foundational argument of Vedanta. From where you start, this is like grade one of real Vedanta, anunyadhyasah. Because from there on we will go and we'll go to different, but without the first step we are not going anywhere. So we have to understand what is this unanyadhyasa and what is that tirodhana. That is the most critical thing. Therefore, actually what happens, please understand this, that this is a bidirectional, it's very dialectical. A hides B hides A assumes qualities of B, and by B assuming, taking over the qualities of A, it hides A. And A attributes its qualities to B, so it hides B. That kind of a situation. Yeah. So Jiva's properties of finitude, agency, suffering, mortality attribute to the self. मैं मर जाऊंगा, I'm going to die, I'm not well. You are fine. Your body isn't well. The body is going to die. We don't talk like that. So this is how we are sort of get wrongly superimposed on the kutastha, the pure consciousness, ghatakash. What is the other one? And the kutastha's properties, their consciousness, unconditional reality, self-luminosity, eternity, freedom, all this we are attributing to the mind, the chidabhasha. Therefore, you say, I want my freedom, I want to take my decisions, and I love this place, and I am truth eternal. You can have all these attributions to the thoughts, qualities of the self. So this is the beginning, this is the final thing. So what we are doing, what is undergoing changes? The kutastha, the anvil, the iron anvil is not going to undergo any changes. Those tiny blocks of iron that you're hammering are going to undergo changes and become knife and sickle and all kinds of things. But we have Ananyadhyasha. He's saying, no, no, this is a real thing. You see, it has taken, it's very strong. This knife is not going to bend. No, but how did you make it if it doesn't bend? Because it bends, you hammered it and you gave it its shape. No, no, it's very strong. It can hold its ground against anything. This is the best knife you can have in the world. So you're attributing the qualities of that iron anvil, which doesn't undergo any changes, to this tiny piece of iron that has now become a knife. And qualities of the knife you're attributing to an anvil. No? So we hammered it. So it undergoes changes. So this is how that Tirodhana Sadrasam that is you are saying. So it's a reciprocal misattribution. A qualities attributed to B qualities attributed to A. The Jiva qualities or this whole subjectivity and its qualities are attributed to the self, and self's qualities of purity and eternity and luminosity are attributed to the mind. Now, if you look at it, this is what is called in psychoanalysis and in Western phenomenology. It's called this kind of identification. So there was this German philosopher, great guy, very complex, Edmund Husserl. He talks about the transcendental ego, and he talks about the transactional, the ego who is sort of dealing with everyday world. And he's saying these qualities of the transcendental ego and the transactional one, they sort of mutually identify with each other. And that is how we do not understand. Yeah. So I'm not going to get too much into it, but just understand that we are not always, like, for example, another good example would be there is a boy or a girl who was in an abusive relationship, and that fellow recovers from that relationship. Or a person had gone into drug abuse or alcoholism, or he was in a not very authentic political party or a cult. He had become a member of it. Guru and his cult, he participated in it. He all thought he was doing fine. One fine morning, he had a realization, like you had the great Hermann Hesse. One fine morning, he realized, I'm living a big lie. Then he went to Switzerland, he sat there and he wrote those famous books, Siddharth and the Glass Bead Game. He wrote those beautiful books there, yeah, after going there, because he wanted to find out what is the meaning of life. Now, what is the difference between the first stage and the second stage? When you are into some kind of abusive relationship or substance abuse or a bad economic relationship with somebody where you are actually making losses, but you think you're going to make a lot of, and then you leave it behind and you're going forward. How do you understand it? You say, I had forgotten who am I. I was unaware of who am I. That's what, if you look at the autobiographical notes of many of these women who have survived abusive relationships, they say exactly the same thing. They thought they were in love, but they were actually codependent and they were subjected to a lot of psychological abuse. When they come out of it, sometimes they go back, there's a relapse. That happens with all of us. Sansara is source of our misery, our confusion. Yet we think sansara is the domain where we're going to get the meaning of life. There's a relapse. But a person who has come out of it, if you ask him, what does it mean for you now to be who you are? He would say, yeah, I had forgotten who I was. So he is telling you two things. He was self aware then. If you look at his notes, his publications during that period, he was self aware. Today, he's also self aware, but he's saying, I had forgotten my true self. So you were essentially saying there is a true self and there is an assumed self, which appears as true self. Now, if you look at, these are news stories in social media, in poetry, in literature, and films. These are experiences we deal with in our lives. These examples help us distinguish between what is kutastha and what is that chidabhasha. Okay? I just mentioned all this to say that self awareness is slowly looking through what you consider to be real about yourself. Your house, your car, and everything. At one point of time, they will appear as real. And slowly, when we go inwards, when we start meditating on it, at a deeper level, we try to have a moment of being face to face with ourselves, a moment of deja vu. You go back, you recognize, you recover, you rejuvenate yourself. Which one? Your mind, your body? No. You don't rejuvenate anything. You see the light which was covered with the cloth of ignorance, the blanket of ignorance. You remove the blanket, the light declares itself. That is the language of Vedanta, but we'll go back. Avarana Viksheva Vicharaha. This is a beautiful part of it, Avarana Vikshepa, because if you are not being able to recognize the Kutastha, then there must be a reason as to why you are not being able to do it. Yeah? Ananya dhasa vijam mula vidya ityaha. What is at the root of this mutual misattribution? Reciprocal, bidirectional, dialectical misattribution. What is the root of it? Mula Vidya. So there is Tula Vidya and Mula Vidya. What is Tula Vidya? When you confuse a cat as a tiger, it's kind of Tula Vidya. What is Mula Vidya? The root of all of it is inability to know the real self. That is called Mula Avidya. Avidya, which is the root of all other misunderstandings in life. The primary mother misunderstanding of all misunderstandings, in a certain way, for the lack of better words, I would say, is Mula Vidya. Let's look at it. Avarana Viksheva Vichara. Anonyadhyasa Vijam Mula Vidya Ityaha Ayam Iti. This Ayam Iti sloka starts now on the verse number 25. Ayang Jivo Nakutastam Vivinakti Kadachana Anadira Avivekoyam Mula Vidyeti Gamyatam. Ayam Jiva, all of us. Kutastam na vivinakti kadacha na. Never ever. This jiva, Because the moment you are being able to recognize the Kutastha as your real self, game over for samsara. Samsara cannot hold you back anymore. You will not be Jiva anymore. You will become Jivana Mukta. You will become a liberated soul. Until then, you are Jiva, you have birth, you have death, you have family, your wife, your husband, your children, you have a lot of things. And you don't have a lot of things. You have moments of happiness, you have moments of sadness. We have all this until we try and understand that the difference between Ghatakasha and Jalakasha. Because the Ghatakasha was never available to us. The pitcher was full of water and was reflecting the Akasha, and we saw the sky, and you say this water sky is the real sky. This mental self is the real self. Therefore, you're saying, Ayam Jivaha Kutastam Kadachana Na Vivinakti, never ever discriminates, never ever is being able to isolate the pure self from what he thinks is his self, his mental self, his subjective identity. And why it happens? When did it start, sir? Anadihi avivekaha ayam. This lack of discrimination hasn't happened yesterday. So we should not worry actually. There's nothing to break our heads over. We have to make a beginning, but we need to also understand it has no beginning. And it's a beautiful statement. It has no beginning. Why? Because the sansara and everything. There's no particular date on which this ignorance, like for example, you know a complex mathematical theorem. You know how it works. Yeah? And ignorance of this equation, what is the early date? There's no date. There is a date of birth for the wisdom. There's no date of birth for ignorance. Ignorance is always without a date of birth. You saw a snake on a rope. What is the date of birth of the snake? No date of birth. When was the snake born? The moment you saw it, you saw the snake. That is how it happens to you. What is the date of birth? There is no date of birth. Therefore, ayam jiva na kushtam vivinakti kadachana anadihi aviveko ayam mula vidya iti gamyatam. Please understand, it has no beginning. Don't look for, is one of our famous Vedanta acharyas is Rishikesh, the very compassionate great teacher, Swami Tattvavidhananji of the Dayananda Ashram order. He keeps making this fun, a very beautiful joke. He says, the wisest of the wise on earth spend their whole life trying to find out the date of birth of the snake. The snake has no date of birth. Yeah. So please look at it. Ayam eva anunyadhyasena mithya jnana sahito jivaha kadachana yada kadapi kutastam na vivinakti tasmat viviktataya na janati. It is never ever able to discriminate and isolate and understand that the ghatakas are not visible to my eyes. It's very much there. Because if there is no space, how do you have water? If there is no water, how do you have a reflection of the sky? Space is a precondition for water to be there. Water is a precondition for the sky to be reflected. The consciousness has to be there. Buddhi is not consciousness. There is something which is pre-existing, which is a substratum for this mental functioning and everything to happen. Therefore, he's saying, I am eva anunyadhyasena, by dint of this anunyadhyasa, mutual misattribution of properties. And what is this? Mithya jnana. That is what is faulty understanding. Mithya jnana sahito jivaha. With this faulty anunyadhyasa, this kind of a cognitive error, jivaha, all of us, that means our human subjecthood, kadachana na kadapi, kadachana yada kadapi, never ever, kutastam vivinakti, never ever it's able to isolate what is kutastha, what is that ghadakasha. Swasmad means from, he's what? He's that chidavasa at the moment, as a jiva. Swasmad means jiva. From his jiva identity, he is not being able to find out, recognize, and see his spiritual, his real identity as pure consciousness. Viviktataya na janati. Kutasa is different from my mind. It is at the back room, it is at the green room which prepares everything that is happening, but that is the substratum that he doesn't know. Ayam anadihi aviveko. And this is the ayam anadi aviveka mula vidya iti gamyatam jnayatam. You please understand, this is anadi avidya. Now, I could move on very quickly. What is avidya and what is avarana and what is vikshepa? But because in the discussed with the question which was raised yesterday, I will just touch upon it before we call it a day, and when we meet on Thursday, we'll move forward. So there was this beautiful comment sent by Nilaji. Can you please confirm these analogies? Ajatavada, end of burning stick being rotated and appears as a circle of fire. Wonderful. That is dot on. Ajatavada means nothing was ever created. We are talking about creation, which never existed. It's just a mental framework. It's just a mental construction. What is the best example? You have a fireball attached to this. These people do in different kind of festivals, including in different night festivals. Sometimes they do it in Puri Jagannath. What they do is, there would be an iron chain or something, and then there'll be two cotton balls dipped in ghee or water or oil, and then they start ringing it, they're twisting it, and these fireballs move in a circle, and you will see a fire circle. There is no fire circle. What is there? In fact, there is a chain, and there are two cotton balls dipped in water, dipped in oil of some kind of thing, whatever is combustible. And then you have those fireballs, but it looks like a fire circle. Ajatavada. Fire circle was never born. Done. Very good example. Dot on there. And what is Vivartavada? That rope snake. Attatvaha anyatha pratha. The rope actually is not undergoing change. Milk becoming curd, that is parinamavada. Some people say satkaryavada. Vivartavada is different. So it's not there. Tattvataha it's not there. Ramanujacharya, they believe that, yeah, Brahma is undergoing change and Lord Krishna has created the samsara. We are like parts of him. Real parinamavada. Here, Vivartavada. Vivartavada means rope is there, it appears like a snake. And then it is the cause of this in what sense? The rope doesn't cause the snake. The rope becomes that nimitta, and that also becomes the upadana, because that becomes the ground on which we imagine there is a snake. So that is Vivarta. Perfect. There's no problem. Now there are these Avhasavada and Pratibimbavada are actually both, the examples given here are actually both examples of Pratibimbavada. I will explain it. One first example. Sun, moon reflected in water, Jalachandravata. So we have given this example that the sun is there, and then you have 20 pots full with water, and you put some color there. So one is bluish water, greenish water, reddish water, and the sun will look reddish, greenish, bluish, stuff like that. These are sopadhika. So this is Pratibimbavada. And then again, you have another one. The other example is 100 pots reflected 100 suns. Like you have 100 tiny mirrors and they are reflecting the sun and they appear like 100 suns. Both are Pratibimbavada. What is Avhasavada? Avhasavada would be like this, that you have scattering of light and then different colors appears. So that is appearing as if it's there, it's not there. Okay, so that is Abhasavada. Another good example of Abhasavada is that the best example, because they're so close to each other, Sureshwaracharya's Abhasavada, Pratibimbavada, Vivaranavada, Padmavajacharya and Prakasatma Yati and Sarvajnata Muni, the Vivarana school. So the difference is like this: you are seeing your face in the mirror. The Avhasavadi would say that the image is false. The Pratibimbavadi would say that, yeah, the way it looks like a human being, that is a joke. That's not true. But there is me because of which I see the image. There is some truth in it. It's not completely just an appearance. That is the subtle difference between the Avhasavadi and the Pratibimbavadi. Okay? And finally, what you have, the Avachedavada, he's Ghatakasha. Now, the most beautiful is written here that the space within the pot, you might think it's limited, it's pot space, but actually it's never limited. You have created a false limitation, that is upadhika. Yeah, there is no real relationship between ghata and akasha. That is why it is upadhi. So this is how these concepts are there. But as we go forward, all of this will in fact come into our discussion, and we would be dwelling upon it. And because of network issues, I'm really struggling here. We'll call it a day today, and we'll meet again Thursday to take it forward. And we will do the Shanti mantras. And if you have any further questions, please feel free. And you, good to see Amitabh. So you put it, and Nilaji, and I think it's Prakashji. So you put your questions in the group, and I'll come back with my response when we meet it again on Thursday. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay, so have a good time, and